Hey everybody, Dave with Woodstock School of Music, and today I would like to talk about humidifying your guitar in the winter. In colder climates, as it gets colder outside, we turn on our furnaces. And the colder it gets, the drier the air gets in the house. And dry air is not a good thing for solid wood acoustic guitars because the wood dries out. Um, Now, this doesn't affect what they call laminate guitars, which are your more inexpensive guitars, because some of those are laminate, which is basically a fancy word for plywood. Laminate doesn't really move, but it can affect it in other ways, and I'll tell you a little bit later on. Now I'm going to go back to a solid wood acoustic. Okay, you spent nice money on your nice acoustic guitar. You don't want to be having problems because the wood dries out. So let me show you. The first thing that's going to happen is there's a small like radius to the top. It's not perfectly flat. Ideally, there should be a slight radius on the top of your guitar. And I actually can feel mine right here. And when the air dries out and the wood dries out, your top flattens out. I know they call them flat tops, but like I said, there is a slight arc. So as it flattens out, what happens is the bridge drops. And the first thing you're going to notice from having a dry guitar is that your action's going to drop and you're going to just start buzzing like crazy. Okay, now that can be brought back with proper humidity. I mean, depending on how dry the guitar is, you could actually bring that back, in a few days to a week if you had the guitar in proper humidity. Now, I don't know if some of you have noticed, but on older acoustics, there's a lot of older Martins and Gibsons and whatnot that have cracked tops that have been fixed. Back in the old days, people didn't really worry about humidifying their guitars. Probably a lot of them didn't even know about it or didn't even care about it. But the next thing that can happen is your top can crack, and it can be fixed by putting pleats on the inside of the top and fixing it. But who wants a cracked guitar? It also happens along the binding edges here. It can happen to where your top dries out. It's going to split and pull away a little bit from this binding. The same thing with the back and the sides. Now the next thing that's going to happen is your fingerboard can actually shrink. And then that's going to cause what's called fret sprouts. They're frets that stick out on the end of your guitar. So having the proper humidity will help, but also having some kind of product to moisturize your neck. There's a couple of them. None of them come to mind right now, of course. But so throughout the winter, especially on unfinished necks like rosewood, because the rosewood, if it gets dried out, it can crack. Now, getting back to the laminate guitars. One of the ways laminate guitars will also be affected is the same way, with the fretboard sprout. And from what I understand, sometimes when your fingerboard shrinks, it can't be brought back. So what a tech has to do is file the frets and get them, nice and flush with the side of your neck. So I just wanted to share this. If anybody has any questions, feel free to call me at 815-403-8885. I deal with humidifiers all the time. I have 5 in the store to retain like the proper humidity, and I have to fill them with water, change the filter. Sometimes I have to come here on Sundays to do that, and it's a real hassle. But on a smaller scale, it's not as big of a problem. But I also wanted to add, they sell, like Diodario has a thing called a humidipack, and you put it on your guitar, and when you put it in your case, it supposedly regulates the humidity. You can do that. But if you're like me, where you have several guitars and you like to keep them out, ideally, if you had a separate room, it would be best to put your guitars in a separate room and put a separate standalone humidifier in the room. Now, as far as furnace humidifiers, your standard furnace humidifier will not keep up with the humidity that a guitar is ideal for a guitar. They're not meant to go up to 45% humidity when it's 10 degrees outside. Then you'll have other issues happening like your windows icing up and stuff, and I know that's not practical. So like I said, the humidipack that goes in the guitar, a separate room with a separate standalone humidifier, in my opinion, is the best. But But the whole house humidifier, you just got to be careful because when it really gets cold, it's only going to keep the humidity up to a certain extent that might not be good enough for your guitars. Now, people in the past, myself included, I didn't know anything about humidity. I didn't care. And, some guitars, I did have one guitar, a 12 string that the bridge kind of pulled up. Most of my guitars were okay, even though they went through years of being dry. But there's also a possibility that, something will happen to your guitar because I've seen it in really cold winters when it's really cold and customers start bringing in guitars because of these very problems that I just talked about. Anyways, I'm not going to prattle on. This is Dave with Woodstock School of Music. Like I said, give me a call, 815-403-8885 if you have any questions. Keeping your instruments is very important in the winter if you live in cold climates. Have a good day, and I'm signing off.